God's punishment or God's judgment, and so forth. The word namely means something else, because it actually, in no way, relates to a punishment or punishment regulation. Rather, in a completely unspectacular way, a path which leads to the source is meant thereby. Briefly explained, the Sharia is, truly and principally, based on an extensive Islamic system of law, which essentially is directed towards finding a correct answer to the question of how the human being should live in order to be pleasing to God. This is to do with that the administration of law which Allah is supposed to have given the human being, indeed through the Quran and the example of the Prophet Muhammad, should be so orientated that life is made fruitful and that the Islamic believers shall be protected from false steps. In no way do terror, murder, torture, death and destruction belong to that, nor can they be found in the Quran or in some other Islamic religious texts. Along with the Sharia there is still an open-ended scale of other Islamic terms which are unpopular outside of the Islamic world, as, for example, the term fatwa, which, in the Western media, has become independent, whereby in recent times in particular the Iranian Ayatollah's sign of God equals honorific for special Islamic educated class, and the Iranian regime are to blame in that they have misused the Islamic law and have called for the murder of the English author Salman Rushdie and the Danish caricaturist Kurt Westergaard. As a result of that, suddenly the fatwa, which was labeled fatwa of death by the media, stood for the indiscriminate death sentence of barbaric Islamic regimes. Countering that, the actual meaning of the term fatwa is essentially just as unspectacular as that of Sharia. Truly, a fatwa is an Islamic expert legal report which relates to the posing of questions which are not distinctly explained through the regulations of Sharia of the Islamic law. In the new time, from 1844, it has become fashionable among the human beings of earth to, in the name of something, carry out uprisings and demonstrations as well as committing acts of violence, murder, terror attacks, mass murder, torture and other acts of violence and crimes, as well as causing monstrous destruction. All these criminal activities are primarily carried out wrongly and erroneously in the name of an imaginary God and a religion, and in the name of a delusion-impregnated and fanatical belief, or even in the name of Satan, as well as in a hate-impregnated way. However, the entire thing is further promoted through the citing of causes such as nature, environmental protection, animal protection, humanity and justice, and so forth. Consequently, no boundaries are set with the whole matter of citing causes. And since the talk here is of Islamistic terrorism, it is naturally clear that this Islamistic terrorism quotes Islam and misuses it as it does the Quran and the believing Muslims, and brings them all together into discredit, whereby the hatred of those of all other faiths is stirred up against them, principally with the Christians and Jews. This unbridled hate leads to the Muslims being discredited and avoided in all non-Islamic countries, whereby they inevitably do not feel accepted and feel like outcasts. In particular, a very great number of Christians and Jews want neither to see nor to have anything to do with the Muslims, and that is all only because Christian and Jewish conspiracy theorists who are mad and have succumbed to religious delusion condemn the Quran and Muslims and thereby stir up angst. But angst is a very evil form, because boundless hate is also bred up through it, and that is exactly what is wanted by those who, as a result of their religious delusion which comes from their other faiths, and as a result of their hate, are against Islam and its believers. Those who have other beliefs, as with primarily Christians and Jews, who rage, curse and rail against Islam and Muslims, as a result of angst, should overcome their cowardly angst. If they do not do that, then, as a result of their angst, they succumb to the same or similar behavior as the terrorists. Consequently, they themselves become terroristic extremists in some form and drive themselves or others into the hands of those criminals who are involved in terror. Truly, the Muslims who live and work in the non-Islamic countries do a lot in order to integrate themselves in their host country or new homeland, but it is made extremely difficult for them, especially in the Christian countries. This difficulty is also brought to them in that they are refused their centers of worship, or parts thereof, due to cowardly angst and as a result of misinformation, as, for example, with the absolutely hair-raising ban on minarets in Switzerland, which discriminates against the Muslims and which also offends against certain articles of human rights. So, attempts are made, in every dishonest way, to oppress the Muslims and contest their right to exist, instead of seeking a consensus in the form of an agreement of opinion concerning the right to exist, and the coexistence and living together, of various religions. The Christian and Jewish angst about Islam and its believers also stirs up angst in Muslims and, consequently, this angst is a factor based on reciprocity and makes the chances of a good, correct and valuable reciprocal understanding even worse and even makes it impossible. Therefore, the angst from all sides, about each other, must be demolished and finally brought to an end, because only thereby can real approaches result among the believers of the various religions, especially the Christians, Jews and Muslims. All this, however, requires comprehensive information from all sides, as well as the faithful of the various religions opening themselves to each other, losing the angst for each other, behaving as true human beings in regard to other human beings and building up good interpersonal relationships, ultimately, in order to live together in peace, freedom, love and harmony. Billy, Bim, Mohammed Abdullah. Semiaza Silver Star Center, Hinterschmid-Ruti, January 8, 2010, 1:27 am. Translation by Vivian Legg and Dyson Vine, August 24, 2010, Australia. The End.